Welcome, patrons. Guys, I can't take it anymore. There is a vocal minority in my comment section that I just have to purge, or I'm just gonna get so butthurt that I'm going to rocket into space. Now, this has been happening since the first time I mentioned the Canary, and I direct this due to anyone who has ever left a comment like this. One that makes a point to evangelize that the word Kossith is the correct term for the race of the Horned people, and not Canary, which is the religion. Now, this isn't directed at anyone who likes to use Kossith over Canary, but rather the people who make the point to be right about it. Who think that only those with the true Dragon Age knowledge know the word Kossith, and those that use Canary are mindless fools. So to help everyone that keeps saying that Kossith, or even Canary, is the 100% right term for the race, let's talk about the Kossith. Origin of the term. A quick little aside I want to bring up is that there might be a large number of you that haven't ever heard the word Kossith before. And don't be afraid to admit it, because the word is almost never used in the series. Honestly, it's more often used by fans than anything else, and I bet if I asked those who did know about the term where they heard it, it would likely be either in online fan sources or from Iron Bull and Dragon Age Inquisition. But the word was used well before Inquisition came out, so how did fans come to know it? After a brief hunt and thanks to many people on Discord and Twitter, the earliest mention of the word Kossith that we found comes from the collector's edition of the Dragon Age 2 strategy guide that came out in March 2011. Not long after that came out, a Kossith page was added to the Dragon Age wiki, and it's been used ever since. But I want to stress that I'm not 100% sure this is the first place the word Kossith was used. Around the time, the biggest place to talk about Dragon Age was on the now deleted BioWare social network. I will remember you. While some parts have been saved, not all of it has. In my search to find the source, we did find a small amount of comments to say that something had been leaked that mentioned the word. What it was we couldn't find, and it might even have been an early copy of the strategy guide. Either way, I just want to be thorough in my report. So anyway, after trying my hardest to find every instance of Kossith used in published media, I have come to report that it's only brought up once in the games, a small section of the Dragon Age tabletop RPG books, scattered a bit through World of Thedas Volume 1, and then the Dragon Age 2 Collector's Edition of the strategy guide. Now, there are a few more instances of it being used on social media by devs, and obviously by fans online, but if you don't follow any of that, most places to encounter the word are either hard to find, and something that is not usually read cover to cover, or an optional dialogue that some may not have gotten. So, in short, Kossith is almost never used in the series, and please don't feel bad if you have never heard it before. The Kossith. So, with all of that out of the way, what does the word actually mean? Well, weirdly enough, there are some minor conflicting reports on what the word means. But as there are such few instances of the word being used, let's just show everything we know on it. The Dragon Age 2 Collector's Guide has two places where it mentions the Kossith. Adding to the turmoil is the significant presence of the Tal Vashoth, bands of the Horned race, known as the Kossith, who have rejected the Qun. And then later, the Horned race, formerly called the Kossith, only became known as Canary after the Prophet Kozloon bestowed upon them the Qun philosophy and religion. While it does appear in the Dragon Age tabletop role-playing set, I do have some confusion as to when. It pops up in the recent Faces of Thedas book, which does have a lot of older material included in it, but I've seen references to the RPG saying something about the Kossith in older material, although when I looked into it, I couldn't actually find it mentioned, so unless older books have slightly different wordings in the PDF files I have, I'm not really sure what happened. But regardless, this is what the Faces of Thedas says. The first Arishok was a Kossith, who led the Canary people to Thedas from across the Northern Ocean in order to conquer Parvalin. And then the World of Thedas has this to say. A group of Kossith is believed to land in the southern Kokari wilds, establishing a colony. They are likely killed off in the First Blight, giving rise to the first appearance of ogres on the continent. The Horn's race's ancient name is Kossith. This term is not widely used or even widely known outside scholarly circles. Canary leadership do not recognize even the concept of Kossith, and few, if any, rank-and-file Canary are aware of the word. There was a time when the Kossith race prayed to animist gods. They were wild then, devoted to a chaos that kept them from greatness. Then, Ashkari Kozlan, a great thinker whose teachings molded the Kossith into the godless, disciplined Canary. Kossith, an archaic term for a race of large, horned people now known largely as Qunari. And finally, here's what the Iron Bull has to say on the matter.
What about Qunari who existed before the Qun?
The people we came from. They're called the Kossith, but we don't use that word for the race. We came south to Thedas because the Kossith were... I don't know. We had to leave. The stories aren't clear. But I don't expect they look much like us. Whatever they are.
And with that, that is all that is published on what the Kossith are. But there are a few things that were posted online by the devs. David Gator, previous head writer to the series, had a long blog post on his Tumblr describing the usage of the word Kossith versus Qunari. To read the full post, I'll link the archive page down below, but here are the important parts on the actual Kossith. This is a name for the Qunari that predates the foundation of the Qun. It may refer to the actual name of the race or the name of the culture from which the current-day Qunari hail. It's really unknown as the Qunari have discarded the term completely. Almost no one in Thedas knows it, and since the Qunari do not teach it, most Qunari themselves don't know it and would reject it even if they did. There's another archive post from the BioWare social network where Gator and Mary Kirby, another veteran writer of the series, pop in to talk about the word. Gator goes on to echo what he wrote on his blog, but Kirby adds this. Kossith is an antiquated term, not a technical one. It was used to describe the culture that predated the Qun. It may not have even been the name of the race at all. It's the equivalent of calling white people Occidental. A few members of the Qunari priesthood are going to recognize the word, but no one else in Thedas would know what the heck the term means. She would also say on her Twitter, "It drives me nuts when people use Kossith to refer to Qunari and Talvashoth. It's like using Homo sapien just for people from Boston." So in short, what does Kossith mean? It seems to mean the race or culture that the Qunari are descended from. They had horns, or they may not have had horns. They worshipped animals as gods and lived across the sea from Thedas, and a small group of them tried to settle in the Kokari wilds, but were wiped out and captured by the Darkspawn, creating the first ogres. Most modern Qunari have never really heard of it, as it's not something the Qun teaches, although there are those who are in scholarly circles that are in the know, which Iron Bull seems to be a part of. So then, with all of this, should you use Kossith or Qunari? Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you can say what you want. Call them Oxmen, for all I care. But as you probably come to me for technicalities, it seems that calling the race Kossith versus Qunari seems to mostly depend on if it's pre- or post-Qun. Pre-Qun, the race or even culture is the Kossith. Post-Qun, and even those who don't follow it, the race and culture is Qunari. But even that is vague, and frankly we know so little that it's very possible that what we know of the Kossith today could be changed in the future. And that, dear patrons, is all that we know of the Kossith. If you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory, feel free to tweet me at @Gildathon on Twitter, or send a PM to user Gillanon on Reddit. Duresh Sherrill.